Hi guys, welcome back to our video tutorial. And we just completed semester 1 and this would be the beginning of semester 2, and this is where everything starts. So I am basically going to tell you guys to fasten your seat belts properly, and then we enjoy the the journey right from here, because the journey into CCNA routing and switching essential module starts right from there. And I can say CCNA proper right from there, because this is where now you're going to start dealing with your routers, your switches, and other configurations and some other knowledges that you will need to get. So today we are going to talk about routing concept. What is a route? What are routing concepts, and how routers would deal with packets and stuff like that, and routing, what device does it, and what layer does routing. Of course, we need to know all those things. So what we need to understand today, that we are going to first initialize or router initial configuration, and but the configuration, I say, will come in next video. So every other thing that we need to discuss, we just do the theory today, and tomorrow we'll do the practical for this particular chapter. It will just be a basic configuration, something that you and I have already passed through. So I'm going to show you guys how to do configuration basic and some enhanced basic features of basic configuration. So we're going to start right from there, and we're going to talk about routing decisions and how routers use information and data packets to make forwarding decisions in a small to medium sized businesses. So we're going to discuss a lot of things, and the encapsulation process that are used by routers. So routers basically does the routing at the network layer, or you can call it layer 3, or of the RSE layer, or you can call it the internet layer of the TCP/IP. So the last part of this chapter would be we'll explain the router, how the router learns about remote networks. Because first we have to learn, because routers learn networks in two different ways. Either the network is directly connected, or the network is on a separate network where it has to pass the packet through another router. So that is exactly what we mean by remote site. So I'll have a basic explanation of this thing, and I'll just make sure that I go through this thing thoroughly so you guys can understand. And if you have any questions, as usual, you can always ask me. Okay guys, so that is one thing. So here we got network has some of these characteristics, or you can, just some of the features of a network. Includes the topology, speed, cost, security, availability, scalability, and reliability. So any network that you come across or that you would use, these are the fundamental characteristics of that network. The network, you need to set out your topology, whether it is a physical topology or the logical topology. And we all learn what topology means. It is the architecture, the structure of the network. So the structure or design of the network can be the physical side of the network and the logical description of the network. So that is one thing you need to put out. And the next thing that we have is speed. Now when you're setting up a network, you have to think about at what speed you want, what is the capacity that you want to run your network. So you have to look at the devices and their port densities, and look at their capabilities and how they work with speed, because you have to understand about this Ethernet, the common Ethernet, or the legacy Ethernet, fast Ethernet, gigabit, 10 gigabit. So you have to look at how their speed capabilities. So we also have the cost, and whenever you are doing something, you have to look at the money part of everything. So when you're doing a network or you're setting up a network, you have to start thinking about that you're going to deep down. You're gonna go deep down in your pocket to pull some dollars or some pounds or some dollars to do something. And we have security is the most important thing about network. Your network need to be fully secure from internal and external threats. And availability, networks need to be likelihood. Okay, they need to be available at all times, and you need to provide a lot of redundancy to make sure that networks are available. So you have scalability. Network, when you are setting up a network, it needs to be fully scalable. That means at any time that you want to add something, you want to increase your network, the infrastructure or network infrastructure, you can always do it without affecting your previous network setup. And also we have reliability, that indicates dependability of the components that make up the network, and you have to make sure that all these devices have something that connects or interconnects them, and they have a specified redundancy. and we have a router. Now, all this we are talking about routing, we are talking about one specific device or device that operate at the network layer of the OSI layer, or you call it the internet layer of the TCP/IP. What it does is that it routes traffic. So routers connect one network to another network. That is their basic function. That is their main functionality. They make sure that networks that are separated geographically or they're separated because of their IP subnets, the router will make sure that those devices communicate. And the routers make another function of the router also. It makes sure that it determines the best route. It does not only route traffic. If you have multiple routes, the router has the ability to say which route to choose, which route is the best for it to choose, so there is no delay in traffic. Another thing the router capability is that it's responsible for routing traffic between networks, and that's what we're saying here. It connects networks. Okay. Routing table used to determine the most efficient path. So how does the router determine that which path is the best? It checks on the routing table, and there are some criteria that we will talk about. For example, the route with the lowest administrative distance, and if all routes are equal, the route with the lowest metric. So obviously you may not have the same administrative distance. If you have the same administrative distance, the same metric cost or measurable distance, the only thing that the router can do is now to say, okay, I have equal amount for all of these routes that are going to the same destination. I'm going to spread out my information. So it means I'm going to load share. But that is one thing that will come in a later time. So routers are more likely a PC or computer that you have in your house. It has all the components that a computer has. Some of the components have different name that is given to them. Let's say, for instance, the NVRAM. You know, the NVRAM you have. It's not exactly, but one can say it is a type of device or component in the router that does saving configurations automatically. I mean, how to call it for a long distance. How to call it permanently, because temporary means in a short period. So it stores data permanently for the router, and flash memory is the one that contains the operating system itself on the Cisco device or Cisco router or switches. So routers are specialized ports and network interfaces just like PCs, but they have interfaces, because the difference between interface and port is that interfaces are configured with IP address and ports are not. Okay, so that's what routers have. Router has a random access memory. What it does is that it stores running configurations. It stores the running iOS, the internet network operating system, the IP routing and the ARP tables. The packet buffers are all stored in the RAM. And the read-only memory, what it stores is the boot up instructions. It tells where the router would have to boot its operating system from. The non-volatile random access memory is the NVRAM. What it does is that it stores data permanently, and that data that it stores permanently is called the static configuration. And this is what the router will check when first it started. It will start to check the NVRAM to see if there are pre-existing configurations. If none, it will prompt you to ask for configuration. So flash memory is the main brain of the router, because it stores the operating system by default. Okay, so what routers are responsible? Like I said, they forward packets from network to network, from the source to the destination. So you can have multiple networks in a router that require multiple interfaces that each belong to a different subnet. Now, in a situation like this, okay, let me look at that. In a situation like this, okay, I'm gonna have to take a drawing book, try to draw something right from there, so that you guys can see. Now this is a separate network. You can see that 192.168.10.0, and this one is 192.168.11.0. Now this network and this network are completely different. So therefore, devices that may be connected to this switch here. Okay, let's look at it. If a device is connected to this switch, it will not be able to communicate with a device on this other switch.